and welcome to the Alex Jones Deception Series. This is part 20. I'm Alex Ansary. It is December 22nd, and I am coming to you from northern New Mexico. In this podcast, I'm going to wrap up my thoughts. And I will, for the first time in this series, I'll talk about meeting Alex Jones for the first time. Coming across his material for the first time. And what I feel led to the separation between myself and him around the 2007 time period. And I think that this is something that people should hear. Now, I'm not some typical Alex Jones hater. I believe that people discredit themselves when they focus on the Jewish aspect. Or, even more ridiculous, the Alex Jones is Bill Hicks meme. Sometimes I wonder if that meme was put out deliberately to throw people off the trail of actually looking at the real Alex Jones, not just going in some absurd direction. But a lot of people do. A lot of people do. The reason that I uploaded that 2-hour and 22-minute video collage of my first interview with Alex in 2005 and my second one with him in 2007, including other activities that I was involved in promoting InfoWars in my hometown of Portland, Oregon, when I hosted Outside the Box TV on cable access. It's actually a show that I ran for almost 10 years. Launched it in November of 2004, and I moved away from Portland in 2011, went to Dallas, went off-grid in Colorado the first time, went back to Portland in 2014, and I am now back in the American Southwest. So it is 2015, and it was 13 years ago that I came across his work for the very first time. So for long-term viewers, you know about my background and why 9/11 was very personal to me, very threatening to me, and that I have a mixed background, and that I am spiritual, not religious, and because of my independent nature, I was pretty much shunned from an early age from both my parents as well as my family. And by the time I was 18 years old, it was 1998. I was born in 80. I'd always questioned reality. I had been exposed to some interesting things as a kid that most people are not. Now, I'm not getting into that here. I'm going to be writing a book one day, though. And I'm going to get into those early experiences, being exposed to things out of the ordinary, knowledge, wisdom from friends of the family. But a point came in time where I had to go my own way, and I did. I've always thought for myself, and the first real authorities that I rebelled against, you could say, was the programming coming from my parents. I'm going to keep this brief. I grew up my whole life with my mother, and she kind of leaned towards the New Age side. I did not grow up in a Islamic household, even though I received an Islamic last name. It's usually what happens when you're born. You take the name of the father. My parents divorced as soon as I was born. There was issues over, custody battles or whatnot, but I had to learn to think for myself early on, having rejected the dogmatic belief systems and control from both my parents. My dad was the weekend dad. Islam was not forced on me at all at a young age. Only briefly between 16 and 17 and 18, when I had to live with my father's family, did I understand what it's like to be rejected because you're not conforming. And so by the time 1998 came around, I had moved out of the house. I was not living with my mother. I was no longer living with my father. Again, I was just living with my father the last few years, which were not good years at all in our relationship. My dad had a lot of anger. He had some alcohol problems. He tried to put his hands on me. And at that time, I was able to overpower him by far. But I never struck my father. But I demonstrated to my father that I was physically stronger than him. And so this was not something that his ego was able to handle. I was working full time in high school, saved up $2,000. I was working at the grocery store and going to school and going to the gym. And I was doing a lot of martial arts at the time. And so by the time 1998 rolled around, I'm moving out. And I think that the late 90s were really intense for a lot of people. And even though I worked at a number of places during those years, from Nordstrom to the grocery store to even a GNC and even the gas station, I entered my own dark ages. And let's just say that, it was as if I was having premonitions of something bad coming around the corner. Around the time of 99, 2000. And I was starting to wake up and realize that I was in a police state. And because of the mistakes that I made, I ended up having to do a little time. 2 months here, 2 months here. Probation violations for possession of a controlled substance. And so I got indoctrinated with the reality of the police state by being put on a work crew and having to take my clothes off and go through the cavity check every single day. We were sent outside as slaves. So I got to experience what that felt like. And to go through an addiction to heroin, because there was a pain inside me. And I was not on the path that I was meant to be. But I came to the conclusion later on, during the recovery period, which went on and off until 2004, where I was sober from that point on, from that substance. And we'll get to that point, but alternative media followed that, which was the very thing that saved me, to make a very long story short. But during those years of 2000, I got to see inside the cage. And when 9/11 happened, I was mandated, after doing a few months of jail, mandated to live for several months in what they call an inpatient treatment program, where you basically have to live with other dysfunctional human beings, and you're forced to go to AA. And so, when it comes to AA and NA and addiction, there's a root cause of that obsession to self-destruct. I don't believe that a lot of counselors are helping their patients. I don't believe that AA necessarily helps, although it helps some. But over the course of the next few years, following 9/11, I understood the source of my pain. And things began to crystallize in my mind, in my consciousness. Now, on the day of 9/11, I wake up with a friend of mine saying, "You're the enemy," because, people knew that I was mixed. Again, I'm American born, not a Muslim, but I have a Islamic last name. My dad was born in Afghanistan. Came here in 67 to earn a master's degree. And he's been working within social services, public administration, things of that nature, things that he went to school for. Public administration, I think that's what his master's is in. Anyways, he was working on that during the 70s and 80s. Worked for a lot of companies that help people with disabilities get jobs, that kind of thing. Did work with the state of Oregon, administrative stuff, real boring, but he's been a government employee, not a Fed, but in the whole administrative end, dealing with jobs, I guess, disability, stuff like that. He's done that for a number of years. But around that time period of 9/11, that was a time period of my first real recovery. And it lasted for many months, at least 9 months. And there were some slips here and there as the the invasion of Afghanistan took place, and I later identified that somehow I was using because I felt the bombs dropping. Now, this might sound crazy to you, but I mean, young kid, on his own in Portland, no family, falling out with a father because I rejected his authority, his hands around my neck, literally. I fought back without hitting my father, but I showed my father that I would not be subservient to him as his father did to him. And so around that year, going back a few years to 98, he actually, I'm not going to get more into family stories, he moved to the D.C. area where where that side of the family lives. Not at all on the West Coast, like all of them in the Fairfax, Virginia area. Some of them translators for United Mission Essential, which is the Walmart of translation services. So my relationship with my mother and my father was already severed because of things that happened in my childhood. You take them, no, you take them, crazy stuff like that happened during those teenage years. And so that combined with other things, again, a sense of impending doom, that something was going to happen, and it wasn't Y2K, but during that Y2K period, again, I was going through a lot of inner turmoil, and that was the peak of my self-abuse. Following 9/11, went back to work. This was after years of working at the grocery store. Started renting a apartment, or rather a room in a shared housing situation, one of many. And I had gone to school at PCC for some time. And I think I took sociology, I took writing 101. I took radio broadcasting much later in life. That was between 2005 and 2007, but we'll get there. But probably in the spring of 2002, I was working at the Benson Hotel, which is a 4-star hotel restaurant, as a busboy downstairs. And I had cable TV. I was all excited about getting back on my feet and getting a bed, renting a room in a cool part of town, and doing a few meetings here and there. But I was about to find my way. I was seeking. And there was actually some meditation retreats that I did then. I did a lot of seeking and thinking about all that I had been taught about the nature of reality from my mother, from the New Age perspective, and I was filtering out the dogmatic controlling aspects and then starting to really make decisions for myself. And I think that this was the first time that I really got on the internet as far as research. I had been on the internet in 1996, checked out some chat rooms, thought they were stupid. I think that was 96, 97. Never got into the real-time video game playing like Doom, shoot-'em-up games. I tried once, but for some reason, I couldn't get it to work. Played a few video games here and there, but for the most part, I wasn't really on the computer prior to that. Throughout my teenage years, it was mostly martial arts training, and a former boyfriend of my mother's was my original instructor. A man of Japanese descent that taught me a great many things. Now, it was in that shared living situation where I had a TV and cable at the same time that I'm setting up my computer and internet. And what happens is I see 9/11 The Road to Tyranny. I believe it was 2 o'clock in the morning. And I mean, to me, that was a spiritual experience when I saw that film, having already had my mind on 9/11 and suspecting that something bad was going to happen to Afghanistan, by the way, premonitions in the summer, that it would be on the mat. Not necessarily like this 9/11, thing, but that something was going to be happening And again, I feel like genetically or something that I was responding with my self-abuse or whatever to Afghanistan and what was going on there and what was about to happen. Somehow or another, my body was affected, and that, I believe, was a source of my self-abuse, along with the fallout with family and all the coldness and craziness that went on. It was a combination of factors, not to mention that all of a sudden it's all around me. And there was record numbers of ODs in the Portland area in 99, 2000. So it was also the time and place, if you look back at the history books. But by 2002, I'm seeing 9/11, The Road to Tyranny. And again, my first impression of Alex Jones was that, this guy may be a Nazi. He kind of had a very aggressive, commanding tone. So my initial thought was that I was watching Nazi propaganda, like, some white supremacist program. At that time, there were other white supremacist programs. One was titled Nuke Israel, and it would be on late at night, and there would be a local in the Portland area that would air that. So I wasn't really sure what program it was. I started watching it immediately. It's like, oh my God. This is the first time I've seen anybody remotely go in the direction of truth regarding Afghanistan, regarding 9/11. And I began to understand why I was hurting. I began to understand why I was being pulled to investigate things, why I was starting to question things more and more. I saw Alex Jones as a brother, spiritually. In my eyes at that time, there was no other man. And really, there was Michael Rupert, and I came across him later on. That's another story. But I saw that Alex Jones was on the scene right away. And I could see the war drums beating, preparing us for 2003, the invasion of Iraq. Now, during that time, I had also read David Icke's first book, not the first book, but the 1995 book, And the Truth Shall Set You Free. I'm listening to Coast every single night. I'm seeing the 111s as they're talking about on George Norrie, and I am identifying that to be a synchronicity, like an awakening. And I do see other numbers, by the way, involving threes and ones, but that's another subject. I think there's something beyond the whole Masonic interpretation of numbers in 33. But 2003 was a big time for me. Now, I told you about the criminal history, and I was up for promotion. And I had to answer, honestly, on the liquor license application if I ever had been convicted of a felony. And because I lied on my initial application, I was fired. And I believe it was in that it was probably a month before they went into Iraq. And what happened was, at that time, there were not a lot of restaurant jobs available in Portland. It was fucked up to try to find work in Portland in 2003. But doing day labor, even holding signs, whatever I had to do, I made my rent. Went through periods of sobering up. Started taking a kung fu class. Started going to a spiritual meetup, where people talk about, crazy things that I later walked away from. So I got an education in how some people, think they're spiritual, but they're tapping into energy and spirits that they know nothing about. So I never got deep into mainstream New Age stuff. I've always kind of rejected the world of channelers. I believe that we should, like a Sufi or a real Gnostic, seek to have a deeper relationship or understanding of that which we choose to call God. And speaking out against the New World Order, we're speaking out against a great evil. Whether you see it as a Satan, a reptilian, an archon, as I often call it. And so, Yeah, in the early days. So let's go back to 2003. I spent all night, and this ties into somebody else, and I'll just be brief on that. I hear Clyde Lewis on the radio, and for the first time, this is after coming across David Icke's book, the Alex Jones movie, and I come across Clyde Lewis of Ground Zero Radio, and he's talking about the implantable microchip. And I had just seen Alex Jones talk about the implantable microchip, and something about this ran true for me. So I remember staying up all night long, and I created a whole folder on everything that I can find about Digital Angel. I was looking at their, I was obsessed with it for like 12 hours straight. I was looking at their stock portfolio. At that time, it was a penny stock. I was looking at the symbolism. I was looking at the commercial that was made back then for IBM. Sir, your receipt. That commercial where the guy, is looking like the shoplifter, looking all nervous, sweaty, kind of dirty. Some old lady's looking at him like, huh. He grabs everything and he goes out the boop, 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 sir. He thinks he's about to be arrested. The security officer is just giving him his receipt because he's got a microchip. Started going down to Clyde Lewis's Ground Zero. He actually did the show live for a while at a bar. Not very many people were doing that in America after 9/11, so I started promoting Clyde's work. But before I hit that, what was the beginning of a long stretch of sobriety, I went out one more time, and I went out hard. And I remember Alex Jones called into the Ground Zero show. I think it was 2004. And it was in March. And, okay, so Alex was the guest on Clyde's show. And I call in. And I say, I'm going to get involved. I'm 24 years old. I forget all of what I said. But that moment I'll never forget. I made the commitment to Alex Jones, and I made the commitment to Clyde Lewis that I was going to clean up my life without telling them that. I just said on the radio, I'm getting in this. This is for real. This is calling me. This is who I am. There's no place for me in the AA meetings and the NA meetings. I understand why I was killing myself. I understood on a level, somehow, some way. I was affected by the bombs dropping on Afghanistan. I have an ancestor, Abdullah Ansary. He was a Sufi. He was not a radical Muslim. He's buried in Herat, Afghanistan. All I know about him is what I've been able to read off Wikipedia and a few books from Amazon. But you know what? Sometimes I feel him and me, and I and him. A man that left society and started to speak out against the establishment in Afghanistan then at the ripe age of 35 years old. I'm living off the grid and I'm 35 now. He lived 1,000 years ago. So I don't know what any of that means. What I am saying to you is I've speculated for years as to how I may have been affected by the rape, the torture, the murder of people of my genetic line on my father's side. And there's always been a sense of pain concerning Afghanistan because I am not a Muslim. I do not speak Farsi. I was raised by my mother. I lived with my mother my entire life. Was kept on a very short leash. Even when I visited my father. But like I said, I did get a chance to meet other family. And while they weren't radical Muslims, because I never grew up with them and them with me, we never stayed in touch. And when I went on this direction of, which we'll get into later, we're building to that. But all the stuff I did later with 9/11 Truth, You could say that it isolated me from both sides of the family. That type of an opinion and promoting people like Alex Jones, which I was doing a lot, as well as throwing in my 2 cents, it was too much for them. It was too much for them. So I am discussing this late 2003 time period, early 2004, making the commitment, and then going back out for one last ride. 3 or 4 days of madness. Living in my car, moved all my stuff out of the place that I was in, put everything in storage, and decided to go to town with $400 to $500 and just absolutely poison myself. One final time. And the date was June 4th, 2004. Now, later in life, I came to discover something called the Venus transit, which only happens once every 130 years. And when it does happen, it happens twice. So it's 8 years apart and then another 130 years. And so the Venus transit, I don't really get into astrology. And I don't understand astrology. I understand solar flares. But all I know is something lifted from me at that point. And I checked myself into drug detox. And I had been out of the jail system at that point for 3 years. The latter part of my usage did not involve the authorities. I did it myself. And so I went through the process of the detox center and then the inpatient program, the alternative living situation, and then I went back to work at a place called Ruth's Chris Steakhouse, where I had continued to bust tables for 5 years to the day. And I was laid off after the banker bailout time period, which was not a good time for our economy, in 2009. That brought it in, by the way, to me working on a regular basis for the man, for the system in a restaurant. After, say, a good 10 years of restaurant work. After 3 years of grocery work. Some people think that I've never worked. But during the early years, there was a lot of working. The male version of Cinderella, if you will. No one gonna come save me. But yeah, I did a lot of hard work while hosting the first years of Outside the Box TV. So in November 2004, I recorded the pilot episode of Outside the Box TV. Very inspired by Alex Jones. I actually created a intro using the Knight Rider theme and a lot of Alex Jones footage. Now, of course, in hindsight, I think Alex Jones may not have liked that. There's some things that I'm going to talk about as I start approaching the subject of meeting Alex Jones. But I really had to preface all of this to really bring you up to speed with what was going on with me prior to that, in that period, which really wasn't a great time for the planet. I mean, you had Hulk Hogan and the New World Order, the WCW. No, I mean, it really was a crazy time period. And the period of 9/11 and the period when, our military went into Iraq. I was self-medicating. And the thing that pulled me out was finding alternative media. So several days, by the way, before my last usage, I actually told Clyde Lewis at a 24-hour coffee shop where he used to hang out that I had a problem and I was checking myself in to the detox center, and that I was going to start my own Access TV show. And he said he would come on my show if I got my act cleaned up. And later on he did. My grandfather, he did what he could do to help in his last days. And I remember him saying, I don't want to leave this planet until you're on the path that you're meant to be on. And it just so happens that my grandfather passed away within a day of my first recording, that November 2004, Outside the Box #1, which was all 9/11, using Alex Jones material from 9/11 The Road to Tyranny. By June of 2005, I'm doing a weekly series. I already had Michael Rupert on, and he turned on me. That's another story. Had David Icke on episode number 17. There was a lot of synchronicities. I got a lot of positive signs from the universe to keep going with this and keep going with this. And so it just snowballed. And I was on a great time slot, Thursdays, Channel 11, 7 p.m. And I had the economic stability working at the restaurant. I had roommates that were not respectful, did not understand me, partied a lot, did a lot of karaoke downstairs, partying college kids. And so it was hard for me to balance. I also started going back to school. At one point, I'm going to school. At one point, I'm doing a radio show. And working and doing Access TV. And I had a girlfriend for a while that was directing my show. And there's nothing like sleeping with your director, let me tell you. But those days are over. Emily was my first love. And my first heartbreak. And that is not our discussion tonight. But some hard, cold realities were served up to me in that falling out. I'll never forget her saying, I don't even believe there is a new world order. And I don't believe I want to really be a part of what you're doing. I lost a lot of friends when I went on this path. And then thinking about what my parents think about me, my father, my mother, and both of them looking at this path I've embarked on as pure bullshit. Now, in September 2005, I went to Austin. I wanted to meet Alex Jones. It was like a pilgrimage. And I connected with Freeman. I connected with Jack Blood. I interviewed Tex Mars. I interviewed Bob Dacey. I interviewed the other 9/11 filmmaker, George Humphreys. I went to Alex's La Raza event. I went down to Access TV when Alex Jones was shooting a show. I don't think he was very pleased that I came down there, but, he did take note of the fact I came all the way from Portland, told me to come back the next day, because he was really not feeling well. This was right after Hurricane Katrina. I had also interviewed some refugees from Katrina, from New Orleans, that were housed at that time at the convention center in downtown Austin. Stayed with a few fellow truthers, info warriors, as they're often called. They were very nice to me. Also, I talked with John Stottmiller. Really got a creepy vibe from him. But that's another subject. But I was very inspired. There was another, the constitutionalist, Michael Badnarik. Did a sit-down interview with him. And so I took all that material and took it back to Portland. The interview I did with Alex Jones, it was, I think I came off as really giddy, starstruck, using some of the same language. I'm Alex Ansary, reminding you there's a war for your mind. I actually, I ended the interview with that note. Now, I saw the way Alex Jones looked at me then, and it wasn't a very positive thing. But you know what? I figured I'm young, I'm new, I really wanted to prove myself. So, went to his La Raza rally, filmed that. did a bunch of stuff with Freeman Fly of the Freeman Perspective. We started our shows about the same time. We've also started our own travels around the country around the same time. Some parallels in research, but not a lot. But I've always really seen us as like a spiritual family, like brothers. Like, maybe even from another time and place. Maybe we were family. Maybe we were feuding brothers. As time went on, though, looking at Alex Jones, it felt like we were feuding brothers because I'll tell you, moving on, there has been a lot of parallels in some of the things that we've talked about. And there are some things that I've talked about dealing with robotics and AI and this larger system that I have basically discussed on my own to only then hear Alex Jones talking about the same thing. So I've always felt that we were tapping into the zeitgeist or some sort of, collective consciousness, 100th monkey. And I do think a lot of that's been going on. Noticing also, similar likes in music, similar likes in different things. And so, yeah, it was easy for me to emulate him, promote him, as well as giving my own spin on things. Again, I've always been someone to slip over my words or make mistakes. I mean, I came out swinging as an amateur. What was important was promoting the message and directing people to other websites like Infowars.com, like PrisonPlanet.com. And many guests. I had many guests on the show. Again, I'm living these multiple lives of work and then worrying about what people think about me. People see me on TV, my boss making comments like, so what exactly are you talking about? I mean, it was weird. But people were somewhat impressed by it, that I was wearing a jacket and, that I was showing graphics. They weren't really absorbing the content. 2007, I was pleased to hear back from Infowars about a second interview, and this is the interview where we talked about in-game. And you'll notice at the end of it, I asked Alex Jones what his position on Israel was. Now, by that time, I'd already been doing internet radio in addition to the Access TV show. After doing some podcasts, I started out on RBN and then actually stopped doing the show days to a week before Wes pulled the plug on John when, John said some things about Alex. And I remember, man, editing what John said and sharing what Alex said on the Jack Blood show, and then playing that on my Access TV show to, in my eyes, expose the dirty shenanigans of John Stottmiller. I was completely siding with Alex, completely siding with Wes, completely siding with Danny Romero. So I went from Republic Broadcasting Network, which I felt there was something weird about the energy. Actually, John got me on the phone thinking that I was going on an anti-gun rant. I sometimes go on these rants where I'm anti-men relying on guns. Men should be able to fight with their fists. I mean, it's just part of being manly. You don't just rely on the gun. And somehow he got the wrong idea, and I told him, go back and listen to the show. I did not take any shit from John Stottmiller. So at one point, I just realized, man, that this guy is not worth it. I was doing that RBN show while being let out of class for radio broadcasting, which I basically wasted 2 years for because it was geared towards, the top 40, shock jock or disc jockey bullshit, and they've removed a lot of those jobs. So, the fact they still had a program for radio broadcasting was laughable. And so I didn't learn anything from that. I learned how cold the market can be. I learned that there are some radio broadcasting teachers out there that aren't very qualified to be radio broadcasting teachers. I learned that it can be a trap to go to school when perhaps you can use that money for other things. But it was during that period of 05, 06, 07 that I was getting a lot done because I was busy. School, radio show, Access show, girlfriend, and work. That is a lot. So my online radio continued. And I went from RBN to We the People Radio Network and had a lot of guests on during that time period. And one of my top stories that I covered was the anti-terror drills of Portland, Top Off 4, which I'll be talking about in my upcoming documentary film and why that's significant as we look at the potential for World War III. So I was discussing these drills quite a bit on WTPRN, which was managed by Wes and Danny Romero. And so for a while, they had a positive relationship. I don't know all the ins and outs. You know, Danny Romero's only told me so much. He does talk a lot, but, you know. I reached out to Alex Jones in 2007. And I was still doing a show on WTPRN. And so that was the positive standing. And because he was still friends with Danny. And so a lot changed after that interview when I asked him about Israel. I also got involved with Oracle Broadcasting. This is the next significant chapter of all this. Where I think Alex Jones got pretty pissed with me. Because here's what happened. I'm on Oracle, and there are other hosts on Oracle. People like Lee Rogers, people like Doug Owen, but I think that Doug Owen and BlackListedNews.com had the most manners. People like Josh Reeves and a few others. They would use their media platform to trash Alex Jones. And they would trash me on their shows. And in the chat rooms. Chat rooms, my friends, is the most distracting thing to get involved in if you're a host. So they were attacking me for having Jerome Corsi on, for having Joel Skousen on, for having David Icke on, for having Michael Kaufman on. So they're thinking that maybe I and Alex Jones, Michael Rupert thought that I was working with Alex Jones. Other people have thought that. I never, ever sent that message that I was working with Alex Jones or talking with Alex Jones. Couple interviews, couple pictures, showed up at a rally. I never made false claims. But there were some people that looked at me in a jealous light. I mean, they were just doing radio shows. I'm actually also doing a TV show where I'm showing a lot of multimedia. At a time where a lot of people weren't doing shows like that, you know, where everything was first going to Google Video. Then it was YouTube. And I think that Alex Jones saw me as competition. I think that the name Alex is something that he wants to have monopoly over, and these are like intuitive feelings that I felt inside. You know, as if you can, if you know someone so well, you can almost kind of pick up on their thoughts. And I know that I've come across as a wannabe to a lot of people in the early years, having the name Alex, using similar language and similar video clips. My style, though, and my speech really did start to take off and change in the years following. But that period of 2007, now moving on to 2008, yeah, I noticed people had a lot more attitude on Oracle Broadcasting, and frankly, I consider the other hosts jerks for assuming that, I had some sort of special privilege over at InfoWars, and because I'm not jumping on some conspiracy, that, Alex Jones is part of the CMP, or these members of the CMP that are Alex Jones guests and also happen to be guests of mine. You know, I rejected the idea that they were part of a nefarious plot. But fast forward through the years, Jack Blood came on my show 2 days after he did his infamous show, discussing his fallout with Alex Jones. And I already felt that I had already been blacklisted, and maybe I was. And so, I reached out to Jack, and we did a radio show. And so it was from that period on. And I don't want people to get the wrong idea. But this isn't being done solely or just because, there was some sort of a falling out or because I was blacklisted. You got to keep in mind, this whole deception series that I started producing didn't really start until the last couple of weeks. I really bit my tongue all these years. Why? Just because Alex Jones saw me as competition. Just because Alex Jones has a desire to have a monopoly over the alternative media. And just because Alex Jones probably didn't like me. I wasn't going to go on an attack frenzy like other people have. Because Alex Jones didn't post their stuff. A lot of people have done that to him. And I don't think that's fair. No man is obligated to post your stuff. But I just couldn't shake this feeling that I had been somehow blacklisted or feared. And then because of, my background and, of course, how some people in society have treated me, I couldn't help but wonder if it was my last name or something else. Wondering if maybe Alex Jones was afraid of a association with me. And so, I talked with Jack. And this was during a time period where a lot of people were attacking me and wanting me to get on this bandwagon of, making my show about Alex Jones, which I didn't. But I started to say a few things here and there. Just a little bit. And moving forward, we're actually gonna skip. Now in 2009, that's the time period where my restaurant work came to an end. Got involved in survivalcenter.com and the survival food and survival supply business. Helped a couple guys open a store. That was its own adventure. And I had really been seeing the social unrest rising in Portland. The anger, the attitudes, a lot of Icke energy. I just saw a lot of people becoming increasingly narcissistic and sociopathic. And I feel that I've already talked about this in this series, so I won't go over it again, that, the old Alex Jones was gone. And this new Alex Jones was a much more outrageous Alex Jones. And so, I try to stay away from all the bickering and fighting. I just wanted to do my show. And come September 2011, I moved to Dallas, Texas. And there's a guy there who contacted me, said he liked the show, said he wanted to start his own alternative media network, not to, attack Alex Jones, but to be a complementary network. He felt that Alex Jones had done a lot of good work. I felt that Alex Jones had done a lot of good work. I've always thought, hey, it'd be great to work with the InfoWars crew. But you know what? You don't have to. This guy had a TriCaster. This guy was talking about studio space. And we talked, and he's like, yeah, I'm going to put together a network. I've got money. I run an electric company. I like your style. I just don't think that Alex Jones should be the only person with a spotlight. It was nothing malicious. And so that's why I moved to Dallas in September 2011. Now, I'm only in town a couple weeks, and Alex Jones, of course, and I'm like, wow, I just moved to Dallas. He's announcing that he's going to be down at the in the Fed rally. And so I go down there and I film, and I walk up to Alex Jones and say, hey, I moved to Dallas. He knew who I was. He said, great, and looked away, like he did not even know who I was. But he did. He knew who I was. But right there and then, a message was sent to me. I talked with Rob Dew. And, to go back, I went on Jack Blood's show to talk about Top Out 4. This was during their feud. And so it could have been that. It could have been Alex being, hey, I'm not going to be associated with anybody Jack Blood is talking to. especially Alex Ansary. There's only enough room for one Alex in the alternative media. And I truly believe that is how he thinks. And other people that have known Alex, that have also known me, have alluded to me that may be the case. But it's not just me. It's a lot of people in the alternative media that Alex Jones seems to resent. The young men that he inspired to go out and start their own show. Because he used to say that. He may sometimes still say that. So I remember going down to that rally and him looking at me like he didn't even know me or want to know me. Or that he was maybe very bothered that all of a sudden I just said that I moved to Dallas. And, who knows what was going on inside his mind. The paranoia, the suspicion, the blind competition. So this individual that also at one point owned a bar called the Thunder Horse Saloon in Dallas, Texas, a biker bar. That was a previous endeavor of the guy that brought me down to Dallas. That was a waste of a year because he was in it for the wrong reasons. And he knew nothing about MLM, multi-level marketing, but that was his business plan. So the project closed when he realized he wasn't going to make $1 million overnight. He was in it for the wrong reason. But again, during that time in Dallas, going back to meeting Rob Dew, I told Rob Dew about Top Off 4. And we did a brief little interview, maybe for the InfoWars Nightly News. And that never made it anywhere. And again, there were many articles that I sent to InfoWars that never made it. And it's not about holding a grudge. It's like there's a reason why those articles and those reports, like Top Off 4 and others, never made it to InfoWars. Again, because of those conversations I had with Jack Blood, maybe asking Alex Jones in the 2007 interview, what do you think about Israel? I mean, he was pissed when I asked him that. And so I wasn't surprised. But what I did is I talked with Rob Dew and I interviewed a lot of people that were there. And you'll notice in the video InfoWarriors Speak Out, that I'm doing man on the street interviews. And I go to the Alex Jones talk in 2012. I helped organize a anti-NDAA protest in downtown Dallas. Also sent that to InfoWars. And I went to FEMA headquarters in Denton. FEMA Region 6. Also sent that to InfoWars. And so I was doing a lot of stuff. And a lot of Ron Paul stuff. And a lot of promotion for the Dallas Ron Paul group. And I went to the RNC in 2012. And so again, I'm sending some of the stuff to InfoWars. But at that point, it's pretty clear. Nothing I'm sending is sticking. It's blacklisted. It's not going anywhere. And that did kind of weigh on me. I also had an interview lined up with Russia Today. Liz Wall invited me on the show. Then she canceled it the day of the show. I believe Alex Jones at that time was a consultant for RT. I believe that. Okay. So I made a video in 2012 talking about that. I was also talking about Ron Paul and how I didn't like the fact that he brought out Ted Cruz for Rand Paul. So, I don't think Alex Jones really watches my channel, but I'm sure he's watched a few things and has probably thought certain topics or topics that he has a monopoly over. Now, without a doubt, I have expressed opinions like there's a coming staged world war and China and Russia are not good guys. That goes very contrary. Obviously, we've already covered that from the Alex Jones worldview. And so the differences of opinion, and I do believe now that's very likely that he's been putting out those Russian talking points for a reason. I do believe that now. And so there may be a reason I don't even know about as to why I've been blacklisted, why it happened so long ago, but what the videotape shows in the recent upload with the interviews with him and my InfoWars related activism and promotion, including participation in the Obama Joker contest. I literally put the makeup on and ran around like a freak, talking about Obama drone in Afghanistan, Iraq. I did that. I warned everybody I could in 2009 about the swine flu and showed up at town hall meetings citing things that I learned from InfoWars. Okay, so even several years after Alex and I last talked, after that whole question about Israel in 2007, I still promoted his work, and I still was heavily influenced by his version of reality. You can even find videos of me screaming at anarchists with a megaphone, calling them feds. Literally, people thought I was fucking nuts. They were literally screaming, "You have been fucked up by Alex Jones." I didn't care. I called him feds anyway. Sent the video to InfoWars. I wanted Alex Jones to see I was the Portland chapter. Now, we won't get into We Are Change and Luke Kradowski. I could not understand why he picked him as, I don't know, like this person he was grooming for something. Now, I'm over a lot of this stuff, but there's now, you could see from my recent videos, I'm doing this because of the recent direction Alex Jones has taken, backpedaling from the old Alex Jones, endorsing Donald Trump's ideas to ban all Muslims, going from reporting false flag news to going with the official version of reality. I'm embarrassed because I lost friends and I promoted a lot of stuff from Alex Jones. People tried to tell me early on that I was making a mistake, and I did not believe them. No, I argued in favor of Alex Jones. That's why this is happening. I kept my mouth shut all these years, so let's go to late 2012, I go off the grid. And I am up in Colorado, living off the grid without power, in a yurt, in the middle of nowhere. San Luis Valley, south central Colorado, Rio Grande Ranchos to be specific, right near the river. And that was a time of healing. Fuck, the energy of Dallas fucked me up. Lived off the grid for 9 months. One of the most significant things that I can tell you about living off the grid and how it relates to this. I had a falling out with a friend of mine. We're having some beers. Some people can they have a few beers and they just start an argument for no reason or a fight. And here's what a small world it is, synchronicity. The yurt that I'm staying in as a guest already had the 9/11 was an inside job InfoWars bumper sticker. And this guy's trying to say Alex Jones is an ass. This guy's, and I'm basically saying, like, this guy's raised awareness around 9/11. This guy's saying 9/11 doesn't even matter anymore. It's like, it happened a long time ago. I'm like, it does matter because people are being killed because of where they're from. The drone attacks are still going on. And so Alex Jones putting out 9/11, the road to tyranny, don't you fuck with that. More words were exchanged. Voices were raised and full on screaming. And I just told him, get the fuck out of here. He was my friend. He did, and he never came back. And I left. I left in fall 2013. Stayed with a friend, did some travels. Again, I had everything, survival gear and whatnot. Actually went to the Dallas Survival Expo of 2012. I had stuff from that. I remember seeing Mike Adams there, I think Rob Jacobson, and just feeling, hey, Alex, don't approach them. They don't like you. And I didn't. I did say hi to John Stottmiller. Man, that guy is a snake. That guy did not want to talk to me either. Now in hindsight, I'm wondering if this whole thing really was about white supremacy or competition. But, getting back to the story, I'm going in late 2013 to Kansas City. Again, someone says, hey, let's start a alternative media network. And that's why I went to visit this viewer. And he wasn't very serious about it. In fact, he was more interested in making videos about Bitcoin, and I came to the conclusion that Bitcoin can't be trusted. So our friendship didn't really last more than a few months. And so I go back to Portland. And you know what? Going back to Portland with nothing but a backpack and going back to no home, no family, nothing, after years of Access TV, and just because Alex is angry with me or doesn't like me because I've given everything to alternative media, now I'm going back to be homeless for the very first time in my life. I mean, I didn't even have it in me to do my Access TV show for a few months, but I did for a year. And a lot of my shows was about the real Portlandia. Not the TV show Portlandia, the real Portlandia. The human trafficking Portlandia. The Portlandia that I believe is going to be in danger one day. If World War III ever breaks out, the west coast of America, human trafficking, Portland, the next great earthquake, the 9.0. Okay, let me calm down, bring it down a notch. The narcissism, the hipster phenomena, the opposite of white genocide, actually a city being completely populated by whites, the other side of what Alex Jones talks about, and all these brown people being pushed out and not being able to find a job, and seeing mostly white chicks working at most of the restaurants. So I saw gender and tribalism, and I saw what it did to me, that all of a sudden I'm coming back to a place where I'm nothing, I'm nobody. I because of my internet history, of course, if you are running a restaurant and you run background checks on the internet, on Facebook, and you're a fine dining establishment, when people run my name, they find my videos and they find my video series. So the more I did in the alternative media, the more I feel I became a liability for businesses and for restaurants, because I was a public person. And I dealt with people glaring at me. That's the difference between myself and other people on YouTube. I was doing an Access TV show, but I was not an Alex Jones with a Mike Hansen with documentary films and maybe a Violet Jones and a father and a mother and a vacation home. I had nothing. I had no home, no family. Nothing. I had my car, and I lived in my car. And I built a homemade teardrop camper, and I lived in that in the remaining time that I was in Portland. Okay? Never fell back into drugs. Stayed out of the bars. I did smoke a lot of American spirits. I went to the gym and I pumped iron. A gym, the only place where I could go and shower. People actually told me, you need to hear this. In various times, in various roommate situations, that people were nervous about maybe the authorities coming to get me because, again, I'm saying martial law is coming. I'm being influenced by Alex Jones material. People are like, if anything that you're saying is true, you're going to put us in danger by even being in this household. And so the nature of my content, and also how Alex Jones himself has frightened people. You can hear clips of him saying, 9 out of 10 of us are going to die. You can hear clips where he's saying, I'm going to die, you're going to die. I'm not going to do the impression now. I'm not going to play the clip. Because you know exactly what I'm talking about. So in that period of 2009, the stuff really had affected me back then. And, especially with me mirroring all the talking points about martial law and the swine flu. And it alienated me. I should have gone in a more unique direction, but I got in this early at 23, 24. I'm now 35, and I feel like I'm looking at the world with new eyes. And it was really, in a way, healing for me to start this series and for me to see Alex Jones go in that direction because, in Portland, in that recent episode of January 2015, I had already become aware that InfoWars was saying that ISIS was in Mexico. I was already aware that this, ex-military Joe Biggs character was more than a little bit shady. And there were other people talking about these reports, these fake reports. And InfoWars and even the intros and trailers, much more militaristic, much more dark. And, I don't want to attack anyone. just merely express myself and truthfully speak with those that are listening to this series. Why I'm doing this and what I've observed out of InfoWars over the years. Everything became so dark. From Satan Speaks to, the look of the eyes of his reporters, to seeing us falling out with other reporters in the past, Aaron Dykes and Melissa, and seeing this new, darker Alex Jones arise to the point where he used to warn people about real issues, and now everything's like this weird Archon, inverted reality, Tales from the Dark Side, Tales from the Crypt, Nightmare on Elm Street. Things have gotten really weird with the InfoWars media machine. And I came back to Colorado after living there for a year, doing my TV show, covering local issues. Did not use my platform to bash Alex Jones. I made some very important points, though, in that episode. And I just did my own thing. And when I moved to Colorado, there, for those of you that are regular viewers, you're aware of the war on off-the-grid living that has been taking place throughout this year of 2015 in Costilla County. Okay, and what I stumbled upon was a corrupt local Spanish government that was pushing out whites. I was labeled a white supremacist just because I was helping a group of off-the-gridders who happened to be white. And so I'm sitting here defending these people. I got the story out there by covering the Planning Commission meeting. They're trying to change a land use code. So, you can't have a septic. Or you can't live there unless you have a septic, unless you have a well, unless you have a cabin or home over 600 square feet. These are all new land use code changes, all designed to push out white people. And so, we live in a world where they're talking about white genocide obsessively. We've talked about that in this video series. InfoWars, Paul Joseph Watson, all the other related websites did not touch the story with a 1,000-foot pole. Natural News did. DavidIcke.com did. Jeff Rentz did. Off-Grid Survival did. The San Francisco Gate did. The Denver Post did. The Washington Times did. DavidWolf.com did. And many other websites. And I'm going, at some point, Alex has got to see this. And he should see this because I think these people in Costilla County are La Raza. And I remember Alex Jones for years saying, La Raza. Yes, for everything for those in the race, nothing for those outside the race. And I'm like, wow. I'm sure people have sent him the story by now. But even then, I didn't make a video exposing Alex Jones or anything like that. It wasn't until recently. And now, I am completing my thoughts in this Alex Jones Deception series. Going from that period of finding him for the first time, having my own spiritual awakening and transformation in my life, and feeling like we were brothers in arms, to several interviews with him, never really met him, never really had a real conversation with Alex Jones, just all the fake, the mask, and repeating the same talking points. And being in this, being freelance, I don't even barely solicit donations. But I've been around the block. I've been in the game since at least 2004. I'm only 35, and I plan to keep going the rest of my life. Now, I'm looking at the world with new eyes. For years, I kept my mouth shut Because, kind of like the Ultimate Warrior with the WE, right? He kept his mouth shut. He talked some shit about Hogan, but he kept his mouth shut because he wanted to be inducted into the Hall of Fame. I have a personal goal of mine to make a documentary about the real plans for World War III. And I've always wanted a sense of recognition, I guess, to be honest. And now I understand that will happen, and it will happen by my own hand, and my own hand alone. Because I alone manifested my TV show during a time period where nobody believed in me, and I kept going, even if some people saw me as an Alex Jones wannabe, and even if Alex Jones didn't like me himself, and I've done it the whole time, knowing that my last name could result in me being targeted. If anything that Alex Jones says is real, at any moment in time, just disappeared, tortured, killed. But I've had a faith in something greater than myself. And because of certain divine interventions that took place during those earlier years, which I haven't talked about here, but I'll talk about those half dozen times where there was obviously direct divine intervention in my life, where my life was saved. And I don't mean in the religious sense, but it was saved. That's why I kept going. And so, for years people say, well, if you're out there speaking some truth, you've got to be an agent. Otherwise, they would kill you. And I don't think the world really works that way. And so, I feel like, I'm not like really an example to follow or anything, but I see a lot of white Americans really concerned about their own safety. And it's like, hey, I've been doing this since 9/11, being who I am. Now, maybe that bravery doesn't mean much to you, but it means something to me. And when I get scared, when I see the things that are going on now, and I got to remember all those times where there was that divine intervention. So I have to ask myself, if there was something that happened in the past that prevented me from dying then to lead me on the path that I'm on now, why should I live in fear? And being that there's a very unique perspective that I have on geopolitics and how the sun affects us and other things, now the information that I share and the things that I talk about, including off-the-grid living and other spiritual perspectives, especially since 2011, 12, and things really snowballing around 2013. The content on this channel is very different than the content on the Alex Jones channel. And this content now is very different than some of my old content. Moving forward, I'm going to be looking at using different terms for New World Order, Illuminati, police state. Even troll and shill need an upgrade. Language creation is part of evolution. And I have been inspired also by seeing so many young men out there. I don't necessarily like their style all the time or their guess. But seeing how, Alex Jones and others have inspired many young men and some women to start their own radio shows and YouTube channels and websites. And some people are doing very, very well. Not a lot. But some people have managed to brand themselves and market themselves. Because there is a growing market for truth. Alex Jones does not have a monopoly on the truth. So I came to the conclusion recently that Alex Jones is on the wrong path, that he is spreading disinformation, and he's baiting racists into his field, and there is no way, there's no way that I will remain silent anymore with hopes that, maybe I might work with Alex down the line, because that would not be good for me. I should not be associated with Alex Jones. I'm not interested in having a conversation with him at the moment. I will, I thought about asking my audience to pray for Alex Jones. I don't know if prayer would help, but I think he's been taken by an evil spirit, and I think he works for Russia and or something else. I don't know that I'm going to change that. And I don't know that I want to hope for that to be changed. You know what? I don't have to see Alex Jones as my enemy, but I see him as being a tool of what we would call the enemy. And that's my concern. Where is he going to take the Alex Jones deception? For now, I had to free myself. I had to free myself. I had to make the series. And now, I have to prepare to move on. Having shared with my audience very personal details about my life and my recovery, getting involved in the alternative media, and facing my own fears of being black-bagged or worse because of the country my father was in. Now, I have to hold back the fear of being put on a list because of my last name, because in this day and age, it's already been shown that last names that sound a certain way can attract attention and can trigger alarm. And so there's a reason why I live off the grid these days. And there's a lot of reasons why I avoid life in the city. I like to live outside the box of the grid. But I can't help but think that I made it off the grid now, or at least to a part of, it's much more rural where I'm at in northern New Mexico, and up in southern Colorado, it's very rural. I don't think that the large cities are really safe anymore. There's too much hatred, too much manufactured gender warfare and racial tensions. Instead of seeing Alex Jones use his platform to bring people together and lift people up, I've seen him tear people down. And so the next thing that you're going to see from me on this topic is an interview that I'm going to be doing with an individual by the name of Andrew Fisher. And we're going to be doing that interview tomorrow. And when that interview is finished and up, I will upload it. For now, this brings this Alex Jones deception video to a close. From northern New Mexico, I'm Alex Ansary, reminding you, the path to the ultimate truth and place of power lies within. Take care.